All right, all right. Good morning, everybody. It's good to see everybody again, and new faces and newer faces. So it's good to see everybody. We'll go ahead and start the meeting with the Pledge of the Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Oh, I almost forgot. Happy St. Patty's Day, everybody. Good to see so much green going around. Please don't pinch me. I'm wearing green. I'm good. I'm safe. I'm safe. I'm safe. You can pinch me if you like anyways. It's all good. All right. So the first thing we'll do is a roll call. Jackie?
Okay. Lorraine Cross.
Here.
Charles Venuto.
Present.
Vinnie.
Here.
Don Dice. Here. John Windsor.
Here.
Terry Casto.
Here.
Robert Putnam.
Here.
Laura Lee Thompson. I think she's here by phone.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, great, thank you. Stephanie.
Here.
Kimberly is not here yet. Todd Swingle is not here yet. Kurt Smith is excused today. Barbara Wells-Scanlon here. And Eric is not here yet. So we do have a quorum.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And just a reminder as well, make sure your microphones are on when you go to talk. So you push the little button in front of you and make sure it's lit so those at home can hear us. Yes, Dr. Winter.
Is there preference to leave the mics off while we're having the meeting? Or?
I mean, I would say it's up to you. Obviously, background noise can be, disrupting. But if the microphone's far enough away, I think it's okay. So at your preference, because some people forget to turn it on. And Logan always texts me and yells at me like, microphone. So whatever works best for you, we'll do that. Okay, so the first thing we have is the approval of the agenda. So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Some. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Lorraine and a second by Stephanie. Any discussion? Any public comment? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, bless you. Thank you, Crystal. Bless you. All right, so the agenda is approved. We'll go ahead and go over the approval of the minutes. Everybody should have had a chance to look over the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the amended minutes?
Yes.
There was a change in the attendance.
Second.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to approve the amended minutes, which did contain a change of attendance. There was just an attendance change. So there's been a motion to approve the amended minutes by Dr. Winter. There's been a second by Lorraine. Any discussion on the minutes? Okay, any public comment on the motion on the floor? All right, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. And Virginia, thank you and your staff for catching the change. Or did Dr. Windsor catch it?
I think Dr. Windsor.
Well, Dr. Windsor, thank you.
And it was correct in what went out in the February, so we have no idea what.
Okay, no worries.
Somehow something got flipped.
Those internet gremlins, they get in there and change things. All right, so now, this is the fun part. The next item on our agenda is the introduction of new committee members. So every 2 years, for those that are not aware, the terms of the committee members are up, although they can be reappointed. And so we actually, we have new members this year. And so what I'd like to do now is take the time for those new members to tell us a little bit about yourselves. And then after that, we're going to have staff go ahead and introduce themselves as well. So why don't we go ahead? I'm gonna go counterclockwise just because it's fun. And so we'll start over here next to Dr. Windsor. We've got Barbara. Will you tell us a little bit about yourself, Barbara?
Well, I'm a native Floridian. That's a good thing, right? Been in the area since 1977. I'm in real estate. Before that, I was a school teacher. Very involved with the zoo, on the board for years and involved with the hospital on the board. But I'm very passionate about our waterways.
Great.
And I did the oyster project myself and did all those things, so been around. I'm
Good.
very happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, and Barbara is the real estate alternate? Nope, I'm sorry, the real estate member. Thank you very much for the correction. Don?
Well, you saw me at the board meeting for the zoo. I volunteer at the zoo quite a bit also through Restore Our Shores. And I'm a marine scientist. I've been for 45 plus years. And in the process of retiring and looking for something to do, and this looked like a good option. So I put my credentials forward, and here I am.
All right, great. And you are the technology alternate?
Yes,
Yes. You got me if I miss, right?
yes.
Okay, good, good. Sounds good. All right. I know Kurt Smith is excused, but go ahead and go Robert or Bobby Putnam? Bobby, yeah.
I won't know who you're talking to. Yeah, so I'm native Brevard. I was born and raised South Brevard, Palm Bay, Malabar, Bulgaria. I've been pretty involved in a lot of things in the past, particularly, including Sierra Club, and my Eagle Scout project was doing a very large Brazilian pepper bust and mangrove replanting in the Archie Car. And I'm a founding father of the town of Grant, Bulgaria. Why? Because I grew up there and I'd like to, see something left like I grew up. And I just, I'm not sure what else. Pretty easy to talk to, so.
All right. All right, Bobby, thank you very much. And you are the tourism member?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. Okay, so I'm going to introduce Virginia really quick, a woman who needs no introduction. But Virginia, if you could, a little bit about yourself and then your staff as well.
Okay. I'm the director of Brevard County's Natural Resources Department, and so Save Our Indian River Lagoon program is now the biggest piece of what our office does, though we also do environmental permitting review and underground storage tank, hazardous waste cleanup, small quantity generator inspections. We have a stormwater program, and for a while, we had mosquito control, but when the Save Our Indian River Lagoon program came up, it was overwhelming, and so mosquito control was broken out of our office. And I'm just going to let staff run down the table, starting with Jean Allen.
Jean Allen.
Do we need a mic, Virginia? Is there a wireless?
Oh, I'll talk loud.
Y'all,
Hold on, Jackie's got a wireless one. Can we use?
For the at-home audience, they need the.
yeah. Thank you, Brandon.
So I'm Jean Allen, and I'm one of the 3 mucketeers. We are working on the muck removal projects in the Indian River Lagoon. I'm a native of Melbourne and very passionate about the waterways too. And I'm the engineer.
Hi, I'm Abby Gehring. I work alongside Jean Allen, and Augustin Sebastian is our 3rd mucketeer, but he couldn't make it today. I went to Florida Tech, and I pretty much studied muck the entire time that I was there, so I'm very involved in it. So if you have any questions, please always reach out.
Hello, I'm Crystal Melton. I'm the finance manager, and I make sure everything gets paid correctly and budgeted correctly, and it's budget season, so I'll see you soon. Surprise. So I would let y'all know this will be my last Sorrel meeting, as I've taken a position at the EOC. So
Congratulations.
thank you very much. I just want to let you know up front that this will be my last meeting.
Hello, I'm Aaliyah Adaman. I started like a month and a half ago. I am going to be working on monitoring task orders and helping Jenny with some living shoreline projects. And I was born and raised in Brevard County as well.
Jenny Hansen. I'm a marine scientist and I work on the restoration projects, mostly the oyster living shoreline projects, and with the county side, also starting to dabble a bit in the seagrass project. So as they get going, so will I.
And I'm Anthony Gubler. I work on the wastewater projects along with Matt Bottolato and Dominic Dudai. They're not here at this moment, but you'll see them soon.
I'm Courtney Meyer. I'm a stormwater engineer for natural resources. I graduated Florida Tech, and most of my projects are funded by the SORL program.
And I'm Brandon Smith. I work on the communications for the SORL program, so the website, Facebook, social media, things like that. And I've been working for the county for 23 years now.
Great. I think we got one more at the table.
Hello, I'm Heather Balser. I'm with the County Attorney's Office, and I'm the Assistant County Attorney Counsel for Natural Resources Department. So.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Oh, yeah, we do have one more at another table, too.
One more at another table.
Yeah.
I'm Jacqueline Watkins. I'm the assistant to Virginia for Natural Resources, and I am the chair for help you guys with this, with all the correspondence to get you guys up to date on what you need with this.
And also the door woman.
The door woman.
If you come to
that
the
is
meeting,
true.
you got to get by Jackie. Okay, great. Yeah, I don't know about you all, but all the passion and the knowledge and the brilliance that is in this room during our meetings, it always inspires me. So hopefully it does the same for you. And with that, we'll move to the next portion.
Sorry, do you want to recognize Todd?
Oh, that's right. So Todd, who is not a new member, but he is a new committee member, but he is now a new member. So Todd, the new members just went ahead and told everybody a little bit about themselves. Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm Todd.
All right. Thank you, Todd.
Yeah, Todd Swingle. Florida native. I was born in Fort Pierce and grew up in Okeechobee. Spent a lot of time on the water there on Lake Okeechobee. Went to University of Central Florida, have my bachelor's and master's degrees in environmental engineering. I also have an MBA from Florida as well. I've always worked in water, both in consulting and for utilities, and then also helped launch Cummins Engine Company's global water management program. So spent a lot of time in emerging markets with Brazil, India, China, and some of the water challenges that they had there. Pretty active on a variety of water-related organizations. So obviously serve on this board and I was one of the inaugural members as an alternate. So I've been here since the beginning. I also serve on the national boards for the Association of Metropolitan Water Agencies, the National Association of Clean Water Agencies, and the Water Research Foundation. And my day job is that I am the CEO of the Toho Water Authority in Kissimmee. So.
All right. Thank you, Todd. Okay, so now the next thing on our agenda is the selection of chair and vice chair. And so the way that Robert's Rules talks about this is there's 3 ways to do nominations, but I'd like to just do it from the floor. So what I'll do is I'll open nominations. Anybody can nominate somebody, and then the person would accept the nomination, then we'll close nominations, and then we'll go ahead and do the voting. So that's the way that we'll proceed. So I'll go ahead and open the floor for nominations.
I'd like to nominate Todd to be our next chair.
Okay. We have a nomination for Todd. Todd, do you accept?
Yeah, my only concern on that's been my schedule, so I'm a little concerned about being the chair because I have had to have some absences where I have conflicts. So I think I'd probably be better if someone else did, but I definitely appreciate it. I'm willing to do it, but I think that would be the only thing is just definitely there might be some times where someone would have to take over for me. So,
Lorraine?
Could we nominate Todd as the chair if you agreed to be vice chair?
Well, let's do the, I appreciate the sentiment. Let's do the nominations for chair first, and then we can wheel and deal after that.
Well, I guess the question to Todd is if we, would you feel comfortable if we had somebody that, with some experience that we knew was going to be here, serving as vice chair?
I'm willing to. I think that's, I'm happy to support. I don't want the committee to suffer from any conflict that I might have from a timing standpoint, so that's my only concern. So I actually think I would be better just as a member, personally. I do feel like that I can adequately engage, and that I want to make sure that whoever's serving as that chair has the time to interface with Virginia outside and meeting prep and things like that, and I think it would be better served for someone other than me.
Okay. So do you accept? Is that an accept or a?
Yeah.
Or do you decline the nomination? And I hate to be so black and white about it because I'm normally not, but.
I feel like you're putting him on the spot.
Yeah.
And that you just need to kind of accept that he's told you that he really doesn't want to do this.
Yeah.
I understand that, Stephanie. I would rather him, and I get it. I would just rather.
Well, I will, to be very candid with you, it's one of those things that I think the committee ought to have that conversation based on the input that I've given, if there's a better person to do it. At the end of the day, if, given all of that the committee's pleasure is still that I would do it, I would accept it. But I do think that the committee would be better served to have a person to take that leadership role. So, so that's where,
Okay.
I don't see it as concrete as that personally. So.
Okay. I think I heard you say the word, I would accept it in there. And so I hear what you're saying, Todd, here. And I think that part comes with the voting.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Agreed. That's fine.
So if I just wanted to see whether you accept it or not. Okay. So Todd accepts the nomination. Is there another nomination? Dr. Windsor?
I just wanted to make a comment. Normally with clubs and organizations that people have been part of, you work out all these details before your meeting, but we can't do that because of sunshine laws. So this uneasy discussion goes on every 2 years because of sunshine. So we, just be aware we're not normally anyway, sunshine. You'll hear more about that in a few minutes.
And I think to add to that, which there are 7 voting members, and so the chair and the vice chair have to be voting members and not alternates. So while there are 14 people sitting around this room, there are actually only 7 that can be vice and alternates. But I do love Todd's discussion and his candidness. I think that is a cornerstone of this committee, which I truly do love. So thank you for accepting that. Is there another, so the nominations are still open, the floor is open. Any other nominations for chair?
I don't have a nomination, but I do want to kind of remind everybody, many of us now who have been on the board since the beginning, I believe we're serving our last 2 years. So this transition for the next group is really important. So we got some new voting members who, you want to throw them into the fire, but it might be an appropriate time. So we do a good transition because you always have to have a plan, a succession plan. And I think all the other voting members have been the lead, the chair for this group. And Todd, you're the last voting member, I guess, who's been around, who has not. And I know you do a fantastic job.
All right, thank you. I do agree with the value of institutional knowledge, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, about making sure that those of us that have been here a while do pass on what we can to the others. So there's one nomination on the floor. And so not hearing any other nominations, we'll go ahead and close the floor. So we'll go ahead and just do a vote for the record. All those in favor of Todd Swingle to be chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Todd, you are the new chair. And so the first course of action is going to be selecting your vice chair. So,
Well, I'd like to open it up for nominations for the vice chair. I do think that's another committee activity.
Well, given the comment about transitions, I would like to, we have a couple of new members, right? Because you're actually a member as well, right? Yep. Robert? Okay. And Barbara and...
Kurt Smith,
Okay.
who is not here.
And
Don, but he's
Kurt
an
Smith is, okay, so it would be hard then to nominate Kurt without his approval, right?
Well, you miss a meeting, you get told what to do. No, I'm joking.
He's an alternate. He's an
Oh,
alternate.
I'm
He's
sorry,
an alternate.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the two new members are Bobby Putnam and Barbara Wall.
Well, can I ask, are either of you interested in being the vice chair in this transition?
I'm not comfortable doing it right now, but
I'd like to work with it a little bit more. I would like to work with it a little bit more to see how you guys operate first.
So I didn't hear resounding affirmation on that.
No, I think, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, put you on the same spot I was on. Would you accept the nomination or no?
I'd rather not at this point, but
So any other nominations? I will nominate Vinnie, just because he has been in this role. I do think that, that there's value of that in terms of executing the meetings. I think there's value in that. That we do have new members on, and so we can serve, I think it's 3 terms, so that, I think through that process of being on the committee, I think we'll be well positioned for folks to take over in leadership roles for their second term, and so I nominate Vinnie.
Okay, I'll accept the nomination with the caveat that it is only 1 year. And so Bobby or Barbara, I will next year, hopefully, just because I think you both are amazing, and so I'd love to see you guys take the reign as well. So, but I will accept, Todd. Thank you.
Okay, and any discussion? We'll take a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, you were vice chair.
All right, thank you. You want to swap seats, or you want me to give you the timer? That's up to you.
It's fine, but I do need an agenda.
Oh, here.
Okay, so next on the agenda will be our progress and fiscal reports. I'll turn it over to Virginia.
Thank you. And because this is your quarterly report meeting, I'm going to be very brief in the monthly progress report. So I'll just highlight a few things that won't come up on the quarterly report. The state legislative appropriation requests, we have 6 requests in your progress report only lists the one that was added this month, but we had 5 submittals before that. And this last week, we've also worked on federal community funding requests, one for septic upgrades and one for muck. And we just got word this week that a funding request to the state to expand the area at Blue Crab Cove, our working waterfront, that has been approved. So we're crossing our fingers, hoping that we will have a willing seller and be able to expand our working waterfront to incorporate more environmental outreach and education in a partnership with the zoo's Restore Our Shores program. So we'll see how that goes through the process, but we're looking good so far. In addition, we've removed 3 more derelict vessels and have state funding to remove 29 more. If you've been out on the water since the hurricanes, there's just way too many derelict vessels out there. Then we are busily working on the budget for next fiscal year. This is that time of the year, but with Crystal's departure, we are trying to get it done very quickly before she leaves. So that's all hands on deck with the budget. And then on presentations this month, Brandon's been out there at various community events. A number of us were at the Indian River Lagoon Symposium. Jenny and I were fortunate enough to get to speak. And then the last thing I really want to highlight is yesterday, we celebrated completion of the 75th project to receive Save Our Indian River Lagoon project funds. Appreciate the 3 new Swirl COC members being at that event. So the Osprey wastewater treatment plant in Titusville is online, and they're seeing those nutrient reductions come down as their biological system gets up and running, and they work on optimizing all the dials and switches. So that was a really great event, and a shout out to the city for making that happen. Any questions before we dive into the financials?
Todd, I had one question. The working waterfront, what is that, and how do people get involved if they'd like to be?
So it is, it's a historic site on, at the intersection of 520 and Merritt Island on the west bank of the Indian River. And it has been a working waterfront. It's the last working waterfront in Brevard County. And so the state has the Stan Mayfield, Debbie Mayfield's late husband, created a working waterfront grant program when he was in the state legislature. And we were fortunate enough to get one of those grants years ago and acquire that site. And so there's a bait shop, and there's Miss Apple's Crab Shack, which takes in crabs from the crab fishermen. We've also recently this year installed a boat fueling station. So there was a lack along that section of the lagoon of a place where you can fuel up your boat. So that's there now, and we just continue to look for new opportunities to allow the people to experience that working waterfront ambiance and history of the county.
Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. On to monthly revenue.
Good morning. So as of right now, we have a total collection of $307 million. We are just slightly. Sorry, I thought it was on. Good morning. So we, looking at the revenue, we are at $307 million collected, just slightly under projection. We should reach it probably next month. So we are currently for this fiscal year of $16 million, and December's collection, because we run 3 months behind for the state to report, it's at $8.3 million, which is the highest we've ever collected in 1 month. And it had the discretionary, so we had $5 million for December and $3.3 million for the discretionary, which was the highest for December, but not the highest collected. Any questions on our revenue? No? All right, right, so here's our summary. So as I said earlier, we've collected the 16.7 million and for this year. So down here on our second part is our expenditures. So the current year expenditures showing 3.4. I checked it this morning. We are at 8.6, which is all financial sources, not just Sorrel funds. Where Sorrel funds for cumulative since the start, we're at 61 million. Do we have any questions on our summary?
Any other questions? Okay.
All right. So we're going to start on our quarterly. Was there any questions on the financial side of the quarterly? Okay. All right, so the quarterly, as you will see, is split up by project type. And so what we're showing is on this column that says Save Our Lagoon project cost, that is how much over the plan of 10 years that it will receive in Sorrel funding. Then the contracted amount is literally that, what we have contracted to be spent out. And then starting with fiscal year 2017, which is our year zero, this is a breakdown of how much Sorrel expenditures were done every single year up to the current year of FY23. The reason why I'm very specific in saying Sorrel expenditures, because we do get grants, and that is not being shown here because we are specifically talking about the half-cent sales tax. And I don't want to scroll too quickly because it's very easy to get dizzy.
There's a lot of information on all those tables. There's just one I wanted to comment, it was on 17 when you get there, but I'm not sure, I'm not sure what your plan is. Are you just looking for questions from any of the tables right now, or?
If it's financially, it's for me. If it's not financially, we'll get your project manager up here and they'll talk about it.
It's financial.
Okay.
It's primarily for the new members who are here. On table 17 is the summary of the actuals for each of the years of the program. And as you scroll across the page on 17, you'll see that the numbers start off with the first year of about $190,000. And they ramp up over the years to where we're in the range of $15 to $20 million a year being spent now. And I just think that's important perspective for people that haven't looked at these data before. It's really good to step back, and even for the old members, go back and look at that again and think about all the comments you've heard over the last 6 years of the program. And just it's a great table. It's a great, and a similar summary at the end of the projects table. There's a summary about nitrogen taken out to date, and I think that's a really important number to focus on too. I'll bring that up again later. But I think that's the most important of the 17 tables that are in the package. And I would have pointed that out to everybody else on the committee before the meeting, but we can't talk to each other.
And just on a related item too, you mentioned that these are primarily the Sorrel funds, but that I think it's an important note both for the public as well as all of the members that in recent years there's been much more availability of federal funding and state grant funding. So do you have a kind of sense, or maybe this is something you can bring back if you don't have the number just right off the top, but how much we've been able to leverage our investment locally to receive those grant funds? Because one of the things that's an important note is that in many cases these grant funds do require matching funds. So the fact that we have this Sorrel fund gives us a leg up to be able to compete for those grant funds when because we're able to demonstrate that we have plans and that we have those matching funds to secure those grant funds. So do you have a sense for how well we've been able to leverage those local funds?
Yes, I do. Our next table is our grant funding table.
Perfect.
So your timing is perfect.
Excellent.
So we can go ahead. These are separated out by where we got the grants, and these are specific to Sorrel staff going out after these grants. So these are specifically Sorrel grants because there have been other grants throughout the county that have been used towards Sorrel projects or the lagoon in itself. So do you want to specify the difference between the two, Virginia? Okay. So let me just go ahead and I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here. So we can get to that summary, but in the meantime, you can see how like this particular grant hits 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different projects. So it's important to realize that these can go individually or it can be split out amongst a lot. All right, so this is how much we have been awarded, $30 million, and to date, my expenditures aren't showing of what we have spent, but this is what we have been awarded as of now, $30 million.
Okay, thank you. Any
So-
questions?
All right.
I think as far as questions from the audience, we'll hold those for public comment.
All right, well then I will go ahead and give it to the next.
All right, so normally Terry Breeden, our section supervisor, would be giving you this report, but she is not able to be here today, so I'm stepping in. So for the new committee members, we also have a quarterly project performance table that goes over all the various projects grouped this in a similar way as the financial table is. So you'll see it grouped by the project type. And as you scroll across, we were asked by the committee to provide different project milestones. So we have whether the scope of work has been received, the contract has been reviewed and approved, and then we have a percentage for the amount of design and construction that's been done on the project. So you can follow along in the progress as those go along. All right, and we'll be highlighting some of these in a presentation afterwards, but I just wanted to give you an idea of how this table is set up.
And I'll just reinforce that these lines match up with the financial. So for every row here, there was a corresponding row in the financial table, so you can see the dollars. It's just, if you put it all in one table, it wouldn't fit on an 11 by 17 sheet of paper, so.
All right. And just also, so you know, when you see something highlighted in yellow, that's new for this quarter. All right, and then the orange is one that, you know, was reported on previously, and green is obviously complete. But sometimes you'll see like this one is at 100% because that one, but it's highlighted yellow because that one is brand new for this quarter, that it just hit 100%. So if you're looking for the progress for this quarter, you can look at those yellow spots. All right, and Dr. Windsor wanted to bring up the totals as well. So at the bottom of this, we do have an overview that gives you the total nitrogen reduction and phosphorus reduction annually, as well as a summary of the different contracts and scopes of work. And we compare it from the previous quarter to this quarter, so you can see the difference.
If I could make another comment there, last March, I pointed out the same number on the same spreadsheet. And last March, it was 98,000 pounds, something like that. We're at 178. So the first 5 years, the first 6 years of the program, we got to 97. This year, we got to 178. You can see the ramp-up of the projects is coinciding dramatically with the increase in nitrogen removal. And I think that's really important to keep pointing out. Keep an eye on that number and that previous table, the actuals each year. I think those are really valuable numbers, and I thank staff for putting those in there every quarter.
All right. So we'll get into
We have one other question.
Yep.
Vinny?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. I thought that the yellows were ones that were a little bit behind their completed time, and the red, no. So yellow is the first time that they're appearing on this chart?
It is a change in the progress, yeah. So if there's any change in the project, it'll be highlighted in yellow.
Okay, and then,
If there hasn't been a change since the last quarter, it'll be the orange color you see.
There was a time years ago where you were right, that's what the color meant. But
Okay.
when we went to this format with the changes requested by the committee,
okay, so yellow is new this quarter.
yeah, it's a percent complete has changed this quarter.
Okay, got it. And then the orange is, it's been there previous quarter without a change in percentage.
Correct.
Okay. There was a whole bunch of yellow in like septic to sewer system, which now means progress, which is great. At first, I was going to say, is there an issue that we need to see? But thank you for the clarification.
A question from Terry?
Yeah, on the summary table, how do I read those numbers, right? I'm seeing, 151, 150, 144, 72 completed. Are these different categories that they sum up to some number? Is there a total number of contracts?
Yeah, this is for the whole table, so all the contracts that have been executed in the whole table, that's the summary.
So we've gotten scope of work for 151, and we've executed contracts for 150 of those.
Correct.
But 72 of them are completed?
Yes.
So the total number of contracts underway, this is my question, total number of contracts underway is 151, or 150.
50 minus the
72.
completed.
The 72 completed is part of the 150?
Correct.
That's my question.
Yep.
Thank you.
That does bring up, so how, as far as then in design versus construction, how do those add up? Are there?
It's the same, it's a cumulative total for all the projects on that table.
Okay, so it would still, if it's already completed in design, it would still be showing.
It would still be showing on there. So any of those other numbers, if you subtract the number of projects complete, that'll give you the current number that are underway.
Yeah, you might just look at maybe changing those headers a little bit, just,
Adding cumulative to the headers.
Design initiated or complete, again, construction initiated or complete, that way, that, because basically they're additive. Any other questions? Okay, any additional information?
Yeah, we'll go.
Larry?
At the risk of going backwards, you asked a good question about the leverage and 30 million versus we're about 257 that we've collected. So is that a good number or not? What's our performance metric here, that we've leveraged 257 and gotten 30 million of grants to go with that? Is that?
It's probably better than that because we haven't even applied for grants for the dollars that we just collected this month, right? So we have spent somewhere between 50 and 60 million total. And so 61 million. So we've gotten 30 million in grants. Part of that's gone to the 60 million already constructed. Part of that's gone to the projects that are underway or in design.
I would also look at it a little differently as well, because our total investment is representative of our need, and for the total projects that have been identified and things of that nature, where the grants are opportunistic in order to enhance our success and to get more done. And so for me, a better metric of our success on grants is to look at how we've competed, what we've done in terms of compared to other jurisdictions. And, you know, having been a participant in some of these processes, I can tell you that this program and Brevard does fare and compete very well. But I think that may be something that perhaps at a next meeting, Virginia, you can kind of highlight how the Sorrel program and Brevard has done on a statewide basis. Because really our capture rate, I think, has been very good compared to many other jurisdictions. And Virginia, you might be able to speak to that a little better. But.
We can try to look at it that way. I mean, I know in some of the governor's announcements, we've gotten an incredible share of the funding, but to give you something quantitative, we'd have to go back and look at it.
This program in Brevard is front and center on many of the announcements and many of the grant awards and even some of the legislation that's coming out. Okay, any others before we move on?
Okay, so we'll get into some details on some of the projects that were completed this quarter, or this last quarter. So you'll notice it was the quarter for October 1st through December 31st, and just so the new committee members know how this goes, we report quarterly, and they then have, I think it's 20 days now, to give their quarterly reports to us from the various entities that we work with. So when it ends on December 31st, they then have till January 20th to give us our reports. We compile those and then give them to you guys in typically the month after that. So it would normally be February, but we had canceled the February meeting because of the Harbor Branch Indian River Lagoon Symposium. And so that's why we're presenting to you now in March. So this quarter will end at the end of March. They'll have till April 20th to give their reports to us, and then we'll present those reports to you in May for the next quarter. So just to keep that in mind as we go through these projects here. So we've been making progress on the various education programs. We don't have the two new education programs in because they were just added in for this current quarter, so they weren't active in the last quarter. But we will be starting to monitor those as well and add those in for your later updates. And the Restore Our Shores, they are 15% complete. They've delivered spat for their oyster gardeners, and they've held a variety of outreach events and built some of the oyster reefs and have various volunteer opportunities. We list those typically on our monthly progress report, so if anyone's looking to get involved with some of the Restore Our Shore program events, they can look at our monthly progress report or just go to restoreourshores.org and find them listed there. The wastewater treatment plant upgrades, the Osprey facility, you'll see noted here is 95% construction. It's since been completed this quarter, but as of the last quarter when this report was generated, it was at 95% complete. And they've started on the construction with the Rockledge facility as well. So then we have the engineering at Melbourne Grant Street is at 100%, so they will be going to bid and getting ready to do their construction hopefully soon. All right. And yeah, it says they have started their initial excavations, with the next step being demolition of the existing slud drying beds and construction of a new bed. And the West Melbourne Ray Bullard plant, that one is still in design, but at 60%. The rapid infiltration basins and spray field upgrades, Long Point Park has been complete. That was one of our first projects that was completed in the Sorrel program. And the Sterling House condo has not been contracted yet, so we don't have any progress to report on that second one. As far as our package plants go, we have 3 different projects. The Oak Point Mobile Home Park, they completed construction this last quarter, and they've That project connects 108 mobile homes to sewer. And the Merritt Island Utility Company withdrew as a project. They did not want to go forward with funding, with accepting our funding, so they have withdrawn that project. And then we have the Indian River Shores Trailer Park that hasn't been contracted yet. The sewer laterals, so we've done smoke testing throughout Satellite Beach, Barefoot Bay, South Beaches, and Merritt Island. And I'm going to let Matt talk to you a little bit about this one. So each of the people in charge of these sections are going to cover their projects.
Hey, good morning. So we completed 4 private sewer lateral projects throughout the county in Satellite Beach, Barefoot Bay, the South Beaches, and Merritt Island. We have an uncontracted one in Titusville. With these smoke testings, there were 778 repairs completed in those areas, and 332 of those were funded by Sorrel. So residents had an option of repairing it themselves, hiring a plumber, or using Sorrel funds to fix them. Sometimes they would just, replace a quick, $5, $10 part by them with a contractor by themselves, or they would use Sorrel for more extensive repairs to sometimes replace the entire lateral or smaller sections.
And Matt, you want to cover how many homes have been, say, 50,000?
41,000. I think he said that. Didn't you say 41,000 homes?
No. So of those 4 projects, there were 41,000 homes smoke tested and completed repairs on the ones that showed a deficiency. So smoke coming out of the yard, out of their clean out cap, out of sometimes a manhole in the street on the commercial properties. For our septic upgrade and quick connect projects, for the septic upgrades last quarter, we completed 20 upgrades. This project has a total budget of $29 million, and we have so far completed, as of last quarter, 118 septic upgrades, and we have a cumulative total of 249 contracted and completed. And for our sewer quick connect program, which has a budget of $11,300,000, last quarter we completed 2 of those, and most recently we've sent out another round of mailers to folks in our high priority areas for these connections. And we've also met with the city of Palm Bay, the city of Titusville, and the city of Melbourne. And we've got in Palm Bay, there are approximately 1,200 of these that we can reach out to folks and connect them. Titusville has some, Melbourne has a few, and we're also going to reach out this month to the city of Cocoa and see what they've got as far as quick connects we can reach out to.
Can you just clarify too, the project cost is the budgeted project cost, not the expended for the work completed though, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Back to the grant question. Both of these programs have been very popular with the state, and so I believe that we are at 50 to 60% state match on nearly all of the completed work on this table.
All right.
The quick connects, do we have a total dollar amount for those, or is that just?
So the amount spent would have been on the financial table.
Mm-hmm. But we don't have any cap on that?
Well, I think the
Quick
amount
Connects
that
is
is
based
listed
on-
under the cost is the
Okay.
budgeted amount.
Okay.
Right. What's showing on the screen is the budgeted amount for Lagoon funds, but we have about double that amount because of the state grants.
Okay.
Go ahead, Finney.
So I know, was it 2 months ago, we were getting, I think, phones off the hook, right, from people because the mailers had just gone out. Matt, I see you posting on Nextdoor, answering questions feverishly. I could even hear your keys being typed. Has that wave kind of settled? Because I know you guys had just announced it, I think, last time we met.
So we have a pretty steady influx of calls. We get calls every day from folks interested in both programs. As you know, word of mouth spreads, we really haven't done too much advertising for the septic upgrades recently, just because they just keep coming in. And the quick connects, there should be mailers going out today or Monday, so that'll be. We'll have some more, folks calling in and interest.
There were 2 large mailings that went out in addition to these. One was for the leaky lateral program. So, hundreds of letters went out at once with code enforcement. And then the septic to sewer projects, because we were working on collecting survey to design a dozen plus of those septic to sewer projects, letters went out to thousands of people alerting them that surveyors were going to be in their front yards collecting data for those projects. So I think that's why the phones were ringing off the hook for several weeks.
Thank you.
Terry?
I just wanted to ask about quick connects. There's nothing, what we're talking about here is disconnecting from a septic tank and connecting to existing sewer that's available in the area.
Correct.
And that also entails, I think, in most places, backfilling the old septic tank. So my point is, there's nothing really quick about that. Okay? Just so the new folks know. It isn't like a magic wand. People's lawns get dug up, and so there's pushback that we found in some places for people don't want that disturbance, so.
But,
Go ahead, Lori.
well, but to clarify, with the 50% match, they're paid for, essentially, those quick connects. And who is coordinating, who has to do, who goes for the grant? Who coordinates? How much of that is on the homeowner and how much is on the utility?
So we offer $12,000 for anyone in the Indian River Lagoon watershed to take part in this program. So to connect to a sewer that's essentially usually on their street within a reasonable distance to connect, and they have permission from their local utility to connect. It's up to the homeowner to choose a contractor and work with that contractor and their municipality to make the connection happen. The homeowner will pay the connection fee to their utility, so it could be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. It just depends on the municipality. The municipality has to have the capacity to handle the new connection. And then the plumber kind of works with the municipality to get the permits, to get the inspection done. And then the homeowner and the plumber work to get the work done and restore their site and their yard and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then they submit for reimbursement to us, or if they are one of our 6 approved plumbers, the plumber will work with us to get paid on behalf of that homeowner.
I'm glad to hear there are 6 approved now. That number has gone up, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the 3 to 4K connection fee that the homeowner would pay, it may or may not come out of the 12K?
It can come from the 12K.
Yeah.
If it's Brevard County Utilities, we can directly pay internally for that. If it's another municipality, we've recently been working with them to pay them directly, so the homeowner doesn't have to come out of pocket with cash and then be reimbursed. We can just pay them directly. So we recently did one with the city of Palm Bay where we worked with their finance team and paid them the connection fee directly, and then we paid the plumber directly. So the homeowner didn't have to come out of pocket at all, and it still came out, I believe, under the $12,000 max.
Thank you.
And just one more comment on this is that there is, when we talk about these people choosing to connect, at some point, I do think it's important for us to make sure we are engaging the local governments, because there is Florida statute that prompts people to connect once sewer becomes available. And so at some point, I think it's important for us to transition toward saying this has to happen. It's not an option. And particularly while there's so many funds available, now's the time to start doing that. So I would ask that we continue to think about what and have a discussion about what our engagement is with the local governments to prompt these connections, because as we're asking our citizens to and our visitors to contribute to Sorrel, and we're spending these funds and making these investments, it is critical that we follow and implement the laws that have been put in place that are aligned with our overall objective. Okay. Anything? Stephanie?
I think that also many municipalities also have a requirement, and they just may not be enforcing it.
Yep.
But they have that when they issue a building permit, that if that becomes available, sewer or septic becomes available, sewer becomes available to someone that they've issued a septic tank permit for, that they do have to connect.
And most municipalities will find that in their comp plan. It says shall connect.
Yep. Any other questions? Bennett?
Matt, just clarification, that's both gravity and force fed, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Force main.
Is it? Okay. I was just going to say, in the comp plan, it's usually the gravity. rather than-
Just to clarify, state statute calls out for the low-pressure pumping systems or gravity systems. So, and state statute would, govern in these instances as well. So,
the grants, though, they are for both gravity and force fed.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
okay. Any other questions before we move on? Okay.
All right, I'm going to touch on the septic removal projects, or the slow connects.
Even slower.
Yeah, so mats are quick connects because the sewer's in, you can connect. The slow connects, you have to do the planning, design, engineering. It takes a few years. And then construction, which we thought was a year, is now 2 years more with the supply chain issues. And then you have a year to connect. So we have a couple projects under construction right now that you can go out and see if you wanted to see holes in the ground. The picture on the left is the Miko sewer extension. So that is down south of Barefoot Bay along US 1. This week they were digging a gravity sewer line on the side of northbound US 1. The right picture is the Indian River Isles project. We just, almost everything is in the ground. We're waiting on the last 2 control panels. We have 1 control panel and need 2 more. And these control panels operate the lift stations and communicate the pump actions to the county so that they can monitor these lift stations. And so once the control panels come in, they can finish plumbing the lift stations. FP&L can hook them up, and then we can basically close out this project and let the homeowners know that it's available for connection. So we're in the final few months of this project, and we should be able to let the homeowners know that it's available for connection this summer.
Which is mandatory.
Yes, and so the county will enforce the mandatory connection. We are using grants on these projects, so if we don't mandate connection and let people off, we will have to return that funding to the state. So we're following through with the mandatory connection.
And how many is that? How many homes?
So Indian River Isles, which is the South Central Zone C, is 147 homes. And then the Miko sewer line extension is 17, mixture of residential and commercial.
Nice.
Yeah. So we have 42 projects total, and nearly $120 million budgeted for this, and tens of millions in grants going to, towards these projects. So there are 7 under construction, including ours and the municipalities' projects. Then we have 2 projects in the bidding phase, and we have 3 completed projects. The 3 completed projects include 276 connections completed to date. We also have, of those 42 projects, 20 of them are in design, various stages of design. And for the county projects, we're sending out another round of letters throughout the month of March, kind of spacing it out more, so we don't get 3 to 5 phone calls at a time, like at the same exact time, nonstop. So we might see next door chatter pop up again.
Good morning. So for stormwater, we have 233 projects in the plan. Of those, 38 are complete. As you see the pictures, the top one, that's Scottsmore Rancha, and that's a baffle box that then goes into BAM system that then flows into the lagoon. The bottom one is City of Satellite Beach, and that's Lori Lane, and they're replacing the trunk line with a treatment and conveyance system. And then we completed in this quarter Johnson Junior High. It's a denitrification media chamber, and it uses 3 different types. It uses wood chips, Bolden Gold, and Nutrigon B. And then we have 11 projects in the design phase. Crane Creek is expected to begin construction this month, and then we have 9 out of those uncontracted projects also that we're waiting on. I think that's it for stormwater.
And for vegetation harvesting, so we have just over $1.3 million budgeted for 9 different vegetation removal projects. So this is one of those programs that was added in by request later in the plan. It wasn't in the initial plan, but we kept getting a call for assistance with this, and so we decided to add that in at the committee and the board's recommendation. And so it removes vegetation from stormwater ponds and canals, which absorbs a lot of the nitrogen and phosphorus that's coming into those areas. And to keep it from decomposing in those ponds and canals, we can remove that out. It also, normally what they would do to clear these ponds would be spraying of them, which then just kills the plants and adds that nitrogen and phosphorus to the lagoon. So by harvesting it mechanically, we can then remove that without having to use harsh chemicals in the lagoon. And so the Melbourne-Tillman Water Control District is, they've completed Canal 14 now and have removed over 400,000 pounds of vegetation with an estimated nitrogen reduction of 4,304 pounds. And the total project has removed 600,000 pounds of vegetation with 6,479 pounds of nitrogen removed.
I was just to make the point on the vegetation harvesting, I think, what we've been able to kind of increase the movement toward vegetation harvesting so that even in projects that aren't necessarily funded or in this watershed, that is becoming more popularized.
Yeah, and
So it's important.
the funds from this have gone to help purchase some equipment to help with the vegetation harvesting too, so the municipalities that are doing this can then continue on afterwards and reduce their spraying by using mechanical harvesting.
Charlie?
Yeah, and maybe another thing we could be taking credit for if we're not spraying with the glyphosate, because there's phosphorus in those. I mean, I don't imagine we've done that, but there are some benefits from that that are not illustrated by that we should be taking credit for, perhaps not quantitatively, but something to consider.
I would like to highlight, too, that your comments about the money being used for equipment. I think that is a very, very important piece to highlight, because generally, I know personally, I'm not supportive of as many one-time activities that really should fall in the maintenance funding activities of whether it's a utility or a stormwater district or you name it. But when it is, then that it helps them advance and move forward and implement a more sustainable program, then that makes a lot of sense. And so just highlighting those pieces that in some of these instances we're kickstarting these programs to help them become more sustainable is a very critical communications piece of how the program's being, philosophically, how we're deploying the money. Others? Okay, I think.
All right. And we're going to hand it over to Abby for our muck.
Good morning. So the plan has 20 muck removal projects with a total budget around 156 million. Grand Canal recently passed the manatee closure date, and so that DMMA preparation is underway. And last quarter, they were able to remove approximately 255,000 cubic yards of muck. It's a lot of muck. Sykes Creek began dredging in August, and to date, they've removed approximately 45,000 cubic yards of muck, which is probably a little more. They're busy working every day. O'Galley Northeast project is preparing to bid, and we have 10 projects in the design phase. Have any questions?
Thank you.
Where is O'Galley Northeast?
So it's right off the causeway, the O'Galley Causeway, a little northeast of that. We have a section.
Okay.
Yeah, right north of that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Awesome,
Thank you.
Okay, so oyster bar projects. There are currently 25 projects, 8 of which are complete. And there's about a $9.8 million total budget for this portion of the plan. 6 are currently under construction, and in the last quarter, the Brevard Zoo was able to construct, and last quarter being October, December, about 1,800 square feet in India Atlantic. They are gearing up right now to kick off build season again. We take a bit of a hiatus over the winter. So getting into recruitment season and time to start building. For the planted shorelines, there have been 11 projects, 7 completed with a total budget of about $130,000. And in the last quarter, the McNabb Park project continued to work on construction of planter boxes with some additional installation, which you can see in the picture there on the bottom right. And to date, we have about 5,000 linear feet of living shoreline plants that have been installed. And I'm going to go back up for 1 second because I did this a little out of order. But I wanted to also give you the update on the UCF monitoring. So UCF monitors a majority of our projects for at least the first 2 years of post-construction. And in the last month, they did the 6-month monitoring at Castaway Cove. There were approximately 290 oysters per square meter. We've shifted our monitoring a little bit. We used to empty containers completely when we had the bags. And now that we're starting to shift to new materials and comparing a lot of different materials, they're taking a set shell volume instead. So we're measuring 3 gallons of shell per module type. So in this case, we have 2 different widths of oyster bars, and we have 2 different materials. One's built out of gabions, stacked up gabions, and the other are open corrals. And we're all very excited to see beautiful oysters in our new open corrals, and everybody was super stoked when we were out there to see these great oysters. So it's been very exciting to make that shift. And just as a quick overall update, as of the last monitoring reports that we had gotten in, kind of toward the close of 2022, we had 79% of our sorrel projects meeting the sustaining success criteria for oyster recruitment and growth, density essentially, and at 58% of our projects were meeting all of our adopted success criteria, which includes numbers of oysters, the total biomass of oysters, and also different size classes being present. So that's where we are.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions on those?
I just have one.
Vinny?
Sorry.
That's okay.
First off, that percentage is great. I wish I was batting that myself. But the question was on those planters. I know that I know we first were shown them, I don't know, maybe last August or October. But I was wondering, again, if we could, and I don't know when would be a good appropriate time, but to kind of get an update on those as they're going, just because I see them as a great project that anybody along the lagoon who has a house or something could hang off their seawall. And so that might be a great way to contribute. And since they're hanging, right?
They're actually, they are constructed, so the box, you can just, I don't know if the pointer will show up here, but there's a little bit of mesh material you can sort of see right there, and a 2x4 it looks like. So they built the planter with the framing like that. It actually does sit on the lagoon floor.
Okay.
And then it's filled, I think, with coquina rock underneath, and then has the jute material with some sort of the gravelly coquina inside the top port where the plants are planted.
But if there was muck or a dead zone in a canal, it sits, the live part is above it.
Yeah, exactly.
So
The
that
live
way-
part is closer to the
right.
water line.
So if a homeowner, down the road, as we look at these, as they come across, if they are doing well, it is something that they could do. So I'd love to just see continued, as they move forward, how they're doing, where they're working well, where they're not working well, kind of like we did with oysters, and also.
UCF is monitoring this project, so we are going to be getting plant numbers from
Yeah,
them as well.
I'd love to get that information then
Yeah.
here as we can, an update, kind of like when we got breeze swept, I think Virginia, was when we did the septic to sewer conversion, and the numbers, the groundwater was so different that we got, rapid updates. So I'd love to see something like that on these.
Sure, yeah, I think we've only had maybe the 1 month because it's sort of rolling out in
yeah.
phases, but we'll make sure that
Well,
we
and it's winter,
keep
so I'm
those
not
going.
sure how much they're going to be growing as well.
I think initial survival was quite good, though.
Okay.
Terry?
What are the permitting requirements to do that?
Because it is on the lagoon floor, you do have to get a state permit, an FDEP or Army, or St. John's River Water Management District permit, depending on where you are. They are within the first 10 feet, but I'm not sure if they qualify for a general permit or if it was an individual. It's hard on this one because they had so much else going on as well with the project for me to make a clear distinction, but it would require a permit.
And then, maybe I should know this, but, so the mangroves, how tall will they grow? To what degree will they affect the viewpoint?
That's a great question. So mangroves, there are rules about maintenance of mangroves and what height levels you're able to, do maintenance or have certified arborists come in and do maintenance. These are positioned low enough because of the water line that it's going to take quite a number of years for them to affect any sort of view plane. They grow pretty slowly, and I think they're set at least a few feet right now below the seawall. So, when you're standing on the seawall, you have to look down and over to see the tops of them right now. And by the time they're 4 to 6 feet, that's still only going to be a few feet above the seawall. And they've also left, you can see kind of a bench in the background. As they continue to design the park, they were considering, where to leave pathways so that it was still very open for human use. Since it is a park, people like to go and fish and do all sorts of things there. So they did incorporate that in the design, and in between the mangroves, there's a large section that are our Spartina grasses, which won't get nearly as large. So there's big open places as well. So there's like clumps and then open areas too.
So is there any height?
Dawn, it's
6 feet,
either
I
5 or
think.
6 feet.
6 feet, I think, is the magic number. If
feet,
they're below
okay.
6 feet, you can continue to do your maintenance on them. Yeah, once it's above, I think you can't do anything again until they reach over 10 feet.
So you keep it at 6 feet, you can maintain it at 6 feet.
And I think just one thing, because I think it's so important. I think that's the key with the mangroves, is a lot of people are afraid that once they get to a certain height, you can't cut them. But I think if you lay it out and plan it so that there is space where you want it, and something like this where you can selectively plant it, to me, that just makes a huge amount of sense, to get our shoreline back to where it was living.
Right, so you can trim them to that 6 feet, and by having them lower than the seawall, that means that they're only going to come up a few feet over the seawall if you keep them trimmed. And then the other height that you were talking about is you can also, above that 6-foot height, you can trim windows. If you want your view to the lagoon, but you want the big canopy above, you can also carve windows.
Yeah, so once they're above 10 feet and you have that large canopy, you can thin the branches in between. And they look strange to a lot of people, but they're also really cool because you get this beautiful canopy above, nice thick green below, and then your view plane through the middle.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this is an update on our clam aquaculture project. It is not only a nitrogen reduction project, but it's kind of a stimulus project for local, the clam industry, which is, you'll see a video on that later on. So we have a $60,000 budget for this project. The goal is to have 10 clam farmers, each plant 500,000 clams. They're eligible for a $6,000 reimbursement each, and that reimbursement can go to clam seed, which are just baby clams that they plant in the bottom. It can also be used to pay their lease fees to the state, to the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. It can also be used for some of the equipment that they use, such as nets and stakes. So far, we have 3 active farmers. And we are looking for 7 more experienced clam farmers that have some experience farming in Brevard or in Florida and are willing to, take this on and plant 500,000 clams. We have reimbursed 1 so far, and we're waiting on paperwork for 2 more reimbursements. And we also will use the same farmers and allow them to plant a next year's crop of $500,000 or 500,000 clams, and then be eligible for a second round of funding. And the clammers report that the clams the past year have grown the fastest they've ever seen, which is pretty cool, in Brevard. So that's pretty cool. Question?
Any questions? Eric?
These clams, they're surviving better. Like, what happened to the clams initially? The water quality kind of messed them up, or are these the ones that have survived all that and are somehow genetically predisposed to surviving, or?
No, good question. So these are planted in leases, in approved lease areas in Brevard County. These are all just a few miles north of Sebastian Inlet. So you have that, good water quality from the inlet coming in. You also have a good mix of the fresh water from the Sebastian River and from farther south. So you have this real plankton-rich environment that they like. The seeds that they're using are commercially produced seeds, so they are a mix, a genetic lineage, which is actually a mix of the northern quag and the southern quag. So you have a shelf-stable product that can withstand, cold temperatures in a refrigerator from the north, mixed with the southern, Florida quahog, which is adapted to warmer waters and the salinities that we have here. We have reached out to the folks with the clam project who have used those super clam, and they have offered to let these farmers have some of their seed at a pretty reduced cost or even free. And I've been trying to communicate with the farmers as well. So hopefully that's something going forward that they could do. The farmers have also been offered to be paid to grow the super clams from a small, 4 millimeter size up to a 10 millimeter size, or larger. And this super clam folks would pay them to raise them on their leases and then use those for other projects, other restoration projects. But these clams are going to market. So the farmers grow the clams. The clams, assimilate the plankton and reduce nutrients. So that serves the purpose of the sorrel project. And then the farmers can sell them and make a profit as well.
Excellent. Don?
Yeah. You answered the question. It's all south of 192 in the Grant area. So, Bobby, this is really the area that you're interested in. So that's where the
I think, bring.
No.
Oh,
It isn't. Yeah, so Bobby, this is your area, and so it's, and they're looking for more farmers in that area. So he answered that question for me.
Okay, any other questions, Vinny?
Just one, Virginia, this to me seems like, I don't know, some funny commercial that we could do about clam farming. I mean, we need seven clam farmers. I mean, how many people wouldn't want to be a clam farmer?
Wait till you see the video.
Okay, good. Is it kind of like a recruitment video or something? Because, all right, good, because now I'm excited. Can we motion to amend the agenda to play the video now, Mr. Chair? No, I'm joking.
Denied. Okay, anything else? Any other questions? Okay.
All right, so this is just that same overview table that we looked at before at the end of the progress report. So just to, let you know that this is what was done as of last quarter. We'll be getting the updated numbers to you in May. So since the quarter's ended, we've actually completed the 3 more projects you see there. So the Scottsmore Rancho Road and then the Titusville Osprey wastewater treatment facility.
Back to Dr. Windsor's comment, and maybe we've already got this and I've missed it, but similar to our financial where we have a graph that's showing builds over time, do we have a similar both contracted and then achieved? Okay.
We've been through a few permutations and it's on my to-do list, but
Yeah.
we're working on it.
So this shows current state, and but you're working on a trend line, because I think that being able to show that acceleration is important, because these projects are so big, and because we're working with government partners that needed to get ramped up in their funding cycles and to get projects executed, and remind everyone we've been doing this during some pretty challenging times with supply chain and COVID and everything else. So I think that ramp up will be pretty impressive.
And we also have our thermometers that show these cumulative numbers, and some of them also show the sort of projected progress. So if you look at the nitrogen and phosphorus removed or prevented, you'll see the current numbers, and then the lighter blue is what's currently under contract. So you see why we've removed 178,000 pounds of nitrogen. We have, over 960,000, almost 970,000 pounds that are currently in contract to be removed.
Great.
I just want to say, as somebody who was here in the beginning and saw that thermometer at the very bottom, to see, maybe 80% under contract of the total nitrogen removed that this plan has, that's, I don't know. For me, it kind of feels good a little bit.
Dr. Windsor?
I tried to find the thermometers on the website yesterday, and they're a little bit harder to get at than they used to be, and I think it's been since the revision of the county website. It just, you may want to take a look at that and see if you can make it easier for somebody in the public to get to it, because it's not intuitively obvious from going to the homepage for Save Our Lagoon. And I don't have a simple suggestion of how to improve it, but.
Yeah, it stayed on the same page on the project plan page. The layouts are a little different since they updated it. but we can look into how we can do that. All right.
Okay, and I think that gets us through the progress and fiscal reports. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'll leave it up, ask the committee, would you like to take your quick bio break now or get through sunshine and then?
Sunshine out of the way.
Let's get sunshine out of the way. Let's go ahead.
All right, I'm on. Good morning again. So I am just going to go through a general overview or review for a lot of you of government in the sunshine. And I also gave you all a memo that you have. Has a lot of information in it. It's kind of for a reference. If you have any questions that come up, you can take a look at that. But of course, you can always call me or email me with any questions, because a lot of these issues are very fact-specific and personal to you. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is the Sunshine Law? Florida has a very open right access to governmental proceedings, and it's actually in our Constitution that our public meetings are open to everyone and noticed. And that includes this committee, so any committee advisory bodies that are part of the Board of County Commissioners are also subject to Sunshine Law requirements. So the three basic requirements are that it needs to be open to the public, and reasonable notice, and that minutes must be taken.
I have a question about reasonable. That's kind of vague.
Right, and there will be a little, reasonable is basically 7 days, is the way it's been interpreted, and I'll get to that in just 1 second, but it's vague for a reason, I guess. So anyway, the point is that you can't have a discussion without it being noticed to the public and meet. So if you all meet, we'll get to this later too, but if you all have lunch or you meet for coffee, just don't discuss things that may become before the board. You can obviously talk about other things and socialize personally, but if you're going to discuss anything that is sorrel business, then it needs to be reasonable notice, minutes taken, open to the public, just like today. So, and what is a discussion? A discussion is not just a face-to-face conversation. It is also, written, emails, texts, phone, social media, any interaction that you have with another member is subject to sunshine requirements. And we have done this in the past of distributing a paper. I think really the best advice is to wait and do it at the meeting. If you have something that you'd like to share and you want to make a copy for everybody, it's best to do it at the meeting. You can technically send an email out to everyone, but if somebody replies all, now you've got a discussion happening, so it's better just to avoid that and not do that, and just wait till the meeting.
But they can send it to us to distribute if it's.
Yes. And then it can be reply all is taken out of the equation, right? All right, so what is?
Before you leave that too,
Yeah.
your last bullet on there was social media, and I'd just like to highlight that because I think in today's day and age, that's a big exposure point. And so just highlighting that, I think there's quite a few folks on here that are active on social media, and just I'll leave it to the attorney to give specific direction, but my personal word of caution is if you see any other committee member post, do not reply to that post in any way, because that becomes a discussion. And you do need to be very cautious about that, because social media is the easy place for sunshine violations to exist.
Exactly. Like, it's just better to be cautious and avoid it. It's the best way to go, is just avoid interaction. Okay, so this is kind of some common sense here. If you're going to have a meeting, like we're in a public building, there's plenty of room for people to attend. Once we get into, again, if you're at a restaurant or someplace where somebody has to spend money to come, now you're getting to where it's becoming restricted. So this is really just kind of common sense to have it in a public building, open forum, where anybody can attend. So here's the reasonable notice. For meetings such as this one, 7 days is kind of the minimum. If there's some kind of an emergency, the recommendation is 72, but no less than 24. And this last point also comes up when we don't have a quorum. It's the same kind of idea. If you don't have notice or you don't have a quorum, you can have a discussion, but you can't take action. So. And the minutes just need to be a summary. They do not have to be a verbatim transcript. And it doesn't have to be necessarily by the next meeting, but it's just, again, a reasonable amount of time, a month or two, for a monthly meeting like this. So I kind of touched on this already. You can, obviously socialize outside of the meetings, but it's just advised not to discuss any SORL business or COC business. And the one thing I would like to point out here is a voting member and their alternate can meet and discuss SORL business because you only have one person voting at a time, so there's no independent voting going on there, so that can happen. And just so you know, for the future, it may come up especially if somebody knows they're going to be absent and you want to discuss, and then the alternate's going to vote. All right, so meetings with staff. This is not subject to sunshine. You can meet with me, call me, any of the staff. The only exception being, again, we can't be a conduit for sending information to somebody else other than what Virginia mentioned. I really touched on this already. The interesting thing about this is if you go to another meeting, and again, this is kind of an appearance of impropriety or ethics problem, is if you get into a heavy discussion, even if it's about something else, it may look like those are two COC members discussing something. Again, it's just be cautious, be careful. It's best if you're going to comment to keep it separate and not get into a debate.
I'd like to add something there as well, though, because, there are a number of forums and activities that are related to the work we do, and that there is significant value for members of this committee to participate and to express their perspectives, but there are opportunities for the staff to provide notice that there will be multiple members in attendance at those types of forums, and once it is publicly noticed in that fashion and meets these other requirements, then that becomes...
Right, which we have done before, multiple times, yeah.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure, particularly for our newer members, that that option's available, but just do the planning in advance so that you can ensure that staff and are supporting that and handling those notices in a manner that is fully compliant with the Sunshine Law.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up because it's a very good point, and it has happened numerous times. The board does it as well. So, okay. So the Code of Ethics for public officers is found in Florida statutes, and you are all considered public officers because you're on an advisory committee for the Board of County Commissioners. Two general types of provisions, those prohibiting conduct and those requiring disclosures. Most common what's going to apply to you is voting conflicts or potential voting conflicts. Again, ethical issues are extremely personal and fact-specific. What might be a conflict for one person won't be for another person, depending on their circumstances. So I just, again, if you have any questions at all, just call me or the county attorney's office, and we can talk through it. There's no dumb questions ever in this because it's always good to ask and get an answer than not. Okay, so the first major statutory prohibition is about doing business with one's agency, but the important thing for this committee is that there are exemptions for advisory members. And if anybody has any kind of a contractual relationship, you just disclose it to the body. You all can choose to vote and waive it. So there is an exception for advisory committees for this. All right, so voting conflicts. I've had a lot of this in the past year, and so we know the procedure pretty well with this, I think. And the language here, the magic language is special private gain or loss, which I know is kind of vague. What does that mean? It could be, you know, real property is affected by a project going on next to it. And this, you know, also it can be a relative. And again, this is one of those situations where read the agenda, especially when it comes time for the project plan update, because that's where there might be a potential conflict. Because there's so many projects, review it ahead of time. Again, if there's anything that pops up, call me and I'll walk you through the procedure. So there's two procedures depending on whether you want to participate in the discussion at the meeting. The county attorney's office best advice is just don't participate. Kind of just makes it easier. But if you do want, so if you don't participate and you just abstain from discussion and voting on a particular item, then you can disclose it and file a form within 15 days of the vote. I have an example of the form here in a couple of slides. And if you do want to participate, you can. It's just a little bit different procedure where things have to be done ahead of time. So if you choose to do that, you can. You just have to kind of be ahead of it before the meeting. And here's an example of the form. It's not too bad. You just kind of say what your factual conflict is. The county commissioners fill out the same form, and I can help you with that if you need help. And I just a couple of sources if you have questions. Again, this is the guidebook by the Commission on Ethics. I also have a phone number in the next slide, I think. You can call them and ask them for help if you have any questions. They're great. They have attorneys on staff. That's what they do, is answer the phone. I've called them. They're great. And they also have a book that they publish, and then that's their website and their phone number. That's my phone number. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was the Attorney General's office also publishes a Government in the Sunshine Manual and Public Records Manual. You can get that off of the Attorney General's website. I also have a PDF of it. You can email me and I can send you a copy. So if you have any questions now, or if something comes to mind and you want to give me a call, feel free. So thanks.
I want to echo the calling the ethics line. If you know, between the attorney's office and the ethics line, I actually had a question. I have to do personal reporting as part of my job. I had a question, called them. One of the attorneys called me back. They actually sent me an email documenting the discussion, so that if nothing, even at some point, if for whatever reason you have a mistake, but showing that diligence that is important. So.
One thing too, we had mentioned previously to the committee for the new members too, on social media, if there is, you know, anything you're concerned about, you can always take a screen capture of your comments and send that to me, and then we can get that properly logged and noticed.
Can I, Tom,
Go ahead.
just three things. I wanted to talk about the meeting minutes. So this body voted to have our meeting minutes way back when just be action. And so if you do read the minutes, as Heather said, that is one of the things that we take. We don't take down every every word that happens. And then the other two things, just I think appearance when it comes to sunshine is a huge thing. So even though we don't talk about things, I know for myself, I always try to make sure that if somebody's across the room and they see me talking to somebody, that it doesn't appear as if I'm breaking sunshine. And then the last thing is Don and I actually met for breakfast. We both paid. We went Dutch. It was cool. But I would encourage everybody to meet with your alternate. I have thoroughly enjoyed the working relationship with my past. In the words of a past committee member, the learning curve on this committee can be steep. And so I myself value having another a mind or thought when I have a thought to run off of. So I would just encourage that.
That would be my question, our communication with our alternates.
Completely, whatever you guys are one vote together, so you can talk about anything and everything.
And it's probably really recommended. I know that I've been well informed by Charlie and I's discussions in the past, and once you get that agenda, we've even set up regular meetings just to make sure that, we both could discuss and inform each other.
Okay, anything further on these? Okay, before we go on to the next topic, I propose to take a quick break. We'll come back at roughly 25 after. That gives us not quite 10 minutes and get started again. I need a gong. Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get rolling. Over here at staff. What's that?
Start the presentation.
Okay, let's go ahead. We're going to get the meeting going back. If everyone can return to their seats, please. And we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is the remote sensing of submerged aquatic vegetation in the Indian River Lagoon in Brevard, Andrew. All right.
So good morning. My name is Kamerosky. I'm an environmental scientist with Applied Ecology. So I'll be giving a short presentation about an ongoing project that we have been working on for about a year now through an FDEP innovative grant to basically look at the lagoon utilizing new technologies and techniques that have really become more available and accessible in recent years. And so part of it is the collection of hyperspectral data, which I'll go in a little more detail in a little bit on what that is exactly. But for this project, we're working with St. John's River Water Management District, in addition to also doing our own targeted surveys, trying to find locations of where both SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation, are present, but also trying to track and characterize harmful algal blooms. And so part of this is there's three large aspects to it. Basically determining fingerprints and ways to identify harmful algal blooms quickly, and then looking and trying to tease out between submerged aquatic vegetation types like Caulerpa, the macroalgae, or Haloduli, the seagrass. And then also ultimately, ideally be able to identify the just benthic sediments. So if an area is more sandy or is it more mucky, if we could quickly, easily map it through either satellite or aerial reconnaissance, that would really be helpful. So two large objectives for this project. In particular, we're using the Sentinel-2 and 3 satellites, which I'll also go into more detail in a bit on those, but is a brand new suite of data that's been out and collecting from space for the last 5 years, so it's definitely been a boon. And then finally, looking into just the overall, well, the fancy term of spatiotemporal variability of blooms within the lagoon, but just where are they most prevalent, where do they start, where do they stop, where are those 1 or 2 day blooms versus the large ones that turned the lagoon a nice St. Patrick's Day green back in 2020. So remote sensing is the process of just observing a surface passively and then trying to determine what is in it. And so when you're looking for SAV in particular, you have a lot of challenges because you have an atmospheric effect on what you can see. So think of like the haze or your sunset, the impacts of just what's in the air. The water column, so if it's a very turbid day, very windy, a lot of sediment kicked up, you can't really see too much, but potentially you can kind of control for that. But then also the benthic cover, which we are also interested in. So the Caulerpa on the left, and then the red macroalgae on the right, or drift algae rather. And then the benthic material, so your mucky sediments and your sandy sediments. So what Applied Ecology did was a total of 40 flights across the lagoon, trying to cover as much of the spatial variability we see in the lagoon. Have different parts of the lagoon behave differently, have different kind of sediments, sometimes different types of the SAV, or in some cases, different kinds of blooms. So we're trying to capture as much of that variability as possible. And so to do that, we have the European Space Agency Sentinel-2 and 3 satellites. These are freely available. They collect imagery about 2 to 5 days, or every 2 to 5 days. And so as long as you have good, clear skies, you potentially have rapid observations that are freely available and just have a bit of a learning curve in terms of how to process and interpret it. Then working with the district, and then again with FWC for getting that ground truth information so that we can verify what we're looking at and calibrate our algorithms and go into that just QA/QC aspect. And then Applied Ecology, we are using a rather large drone or unmanned aircraft system, as the FAA calls it. It's a company actually based in Orlando, so it's they're Harris Aerial, not related to L3 Harris though, but it's nice when some of these technologies are also locally available as well. So the first phase of the project was just purely looking at the Sentinel-2 and 3 information, trying to just figure out what was going on in the lagoon in the first place, and then also trying to come up with this rapid process of identifying when blooms are initiating. So which that turned into our weekly HAB report, which I believe everyone gets the email notification. There'll be a QR code at the end of the presentation that links to our story map with it. And so this part of the project resulted in a publication that will be out later this year in Florida Scientist. And it was basically just looking at identifying where just the patterns of the most intense blooms or the short but strong blooms were located within the lagoon. And so that was used as an input for the seagrass, or the county seagrass planting recommendation guide. And so ultimately what we were finding, though, is that when you look at this particular map, this is an estimation of chlorophyll quantity. And so the red is where it's most intense, blue is where it's least, and those black stars are where the St. John's does their point monitoring. And one of the very valuable aspects of this project is identifying the need for a fusion of multiple data sources. Because when you look at it, the most intense part of the bloom was was missed by the 2 point sampling locations. And so we were able to use this information to target where a bloom was occurring and to go directly sample from it. So it definitely helped in that regard, rather than trying to look for that patch of water that looks very orangey of pyridinium. We were able to go and use the satellite imagery to narrow it down to under a square mile, so it helps. So when we talk about the hyperspectral, this is the best way to think of hyperspectral imagery is that the human eye, we see red, green, and blue, very broad color ranges. And the idea of hyperspectral is that there's still that variation subtly within each of those parts of the spectrum. So when you look at, say, different orchids or violets or flowers that have just very strong colors or very muted colors, you can kind of see those variations at this hyperspectral level, where you have, in this case, 120 just snippets of the visible spectrum that you're able to just quantify. And so in this graph, we have two examples shown of a harmful algal bloom that we sampled of pyridinium up by Titusville this past fall, and then SAV, in this case, Caulerpa. And you can see that they have very similar signatures. They both have chlorophyll because they go through photosynthesis, but also what we use to kind of tease out the intensity and quantify the chlorophyll is what's called normalized difference chlorophyll index. And so it's the idea that when chlorophyll and a kind of photosynthesizing plant goes through photosynthesis, it absorbs in the red spectrum, but then in the near infrared or near red spectrum, where that 708, that second arrow is, it fluoresces. It will actually give off a bit of light, which then that information allows us to, the larger that gap is between where it absorbs and reflects, we're able to go and turn that directly into a quantification of the chlorophyll. So using this information, just to kind of rehash what happened this past year, it was a relatively quiet bloom year with a couple of moments where it looked like it might get interesting, but luckily it stayed relatively quiet. It wasn't really until April that we saw our first major activity, which is up in the southern part of Mosquito Lagoon. And then that kind of subsided. It was a flash in the pan. One of the things to keep in mind is that the lagoon does have we've had a lot of large, persistent blooms, but there's also a pattern of short-lived 1 to 2 day blooms that occur, where it'll just suddenly the conditions are right, it'll bloom, and then it'll just die off immediately. And so you can see both of those occurring. So when we go to August, this is where we start to see a bit more of a persistent, maybe not a large bloom, but definitely a more intensive concentrations of chlorophyll running pretty much just from Titusville all the way down to Melbourne. And it just kind of went through and persisted through September, and then in October it just petered out. And then we had a nice little kick up in the southern Mosquito Lagoon. And it wasn't really until December that we started seeing another large pickup in the Banana River. Primarily, Merritt Island and Cocoa Beach in that area just was persistently high. And so that was another, well, it's where we left it off. And I think when we go forward, we've been seeing some more or continued activity in that part of the lagoon. So phase 2 is predominantly where we're using the drone to collect this imagery and start processing it. And this gives us really high resolution information because the satellite imagery is inherently limited by being in space. So it has at best a 20-meter pixel, whereas with the drone, we're able to get it all the way down to a couple of centimeters. So it definitely helps when you can be able to pick out, say in this instance, the edges of these little Chlorpa beds. This is off of Kelly Park East in the Banana River. And so the goal of this part of the project is that we're going to be able to, by flying with St. John's, we were able to identify, based off their water quality sampling, what is the signature of increased turbidity, what is the signature of increased chlorophyll, since they do the monitoring as part of their monthly regulatory work. And then for us, we then look at the muck sand, SAV, algal species, and then the seasonality of, does the signal change in the winter when most of these SAV go dormant, or does it stay relatively same year round? And so we've done a total of 18 flights with St. John's, and then another 22 that we're, with the guidance of FWC and Brevard County, we chose locations to go. And so just giving an example of how we can process the imagery, this is another flight we performed on Sykes Creek, just south of the Merritt Island Airport. And in this location, there's a lot of Chlorpa, but there is also this little bit of red macroalgae that we were able to identify as well. We were out there on we had a second team out there on a boat who were going through and grabbing physical samples. And so when you process this image with the NDCI, it definitely helps you see where locations that were more, or are not Chlorpa, but were dark because it was more of a mucky sediment. And so it gives you that information, but when you look at the red macroalgae, I mean, it has a characteristic where it's just much brighter, more compact, and the Chlorpa is a little bit more speckled. But ideally, you'd want to be able to go and do something a little bit more quantitative in terms of determining what is what. And so when we look at the spectral signature of all these locations, you can see that the Chlorpa, even though it does have that peak and around the 708, it also has, when you look at the red macroalgae, it's a much more pronounced peak since it has a higher estimated chlorophyll content, but also it has just a different wavelength in the near part of the spectrum. Then you have the open sand, which tends to be just a brighter color because it reflects more light back at you. And then you also have between the Chlorpa where it's more dense versus where it's less dense, you have a bit of a difference as well because the Chlorpa it has a darker pigment as well. So if you've ever seen it, it looks it just can look very dark and foreboding at times. And so the ultimate goal of the project, just to reiterate, is that we're going to identify the specific signatures of the SAV and trying to tease that out from harmful algal blooms. And so this is also an example of some of the time series that we can look at. And this was the 2020 bloom that started up. And as you can see, that particular bloom definitely went through various phases, and it didn't all start and stop at the same time in the same place. And so that's just part of the value of looking at this high resolution satellite imagery is you can kind of figure out where it started, where it ended, and what fun things were happening. And then ultimately what we're going to be doing is, I said that word a lot, is we're going to classify all 40 of these flights to identify what it was we were seeing, build a library of reference spectrum that then we can make available for other researchers who are doing work on the lagoon, and then try to start classifying where the changes in both blooms and SAV are. So the district does in biannual seagrass mapping that we can start looking in between those years, because we know that there has been some substantial changes in seagrass coverage in the lagoon, and this gives us a little bit more resolution in terms of what was happening on the off years or in the winter versus the summer. And so, thank you. And this QR code will just take you to the story map where we have the ability to look at the current or the most recent imagery. You can go and pan around and also give us our monthly summary for the month of February.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the committee? Tara?
Yeah, great presentation, thank you. So if you could roll back or maybe just talk about it, when you got to the point early on of trying to differentiate the two signatures, and you had, I think it was two specific bands, you look at the delta and that, between those two bands?
This one.
That one, yeah.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like much of a differential. How do you can detect with that?
Yeah, and then so that's the idea that you can see. So the pyridinium had more of a, it just has a breakout in different parts of the spectrum. So the NDCI is like a bulk classification. So it's just.
I'm just looking at that particular chart, looking at those two bands and saying, okay, I've got, over here I've got a sample and it's down, you know, somewhere at that lower value, and over here I've got one that's higher, and I don't see that there's all that much difference between the two, or you're saying there's enough of a difference in the green dots and the yellow dots that you could make that call?
Yeah, so the idea is that just when we do the two-band comparison, that's just to bin it, and then when you look over in this part of the, more of the green part of the spectrum, you have a difference of how strong the reflectance is in that point.
Okay, so it's not just the simple delta where those two pink arrows are, it's, you look at other parts of the band as well.
Yeah, we're just an iterative approach. Yeah. So where you kind of can tease out some of the noise before you go too far in your.
Thank you.
Dr. Windsor?
Yeah, two short ones, I think. Thanks. That was a good presentation. The monthly values for chlorophyll you showed, are those for one day, or have you somehow got an integrated signal for the month?
Yeah, so these images are just the median of the of all the available overflights in the month. So some of them.
How many might there be in a month?
Depends on the clouds.
Okay.
If we're really lucky, we've consistently been getting at least 2 scenes per week. So you could have maybe up to 10, 12. But we've had a couple, especially around the hurricanes, where there was only one good image. So.
And the other question I had was, how soon after the satellite goes over are you able to access the data?
Within 12 to 24 hours,
okay,
unless there's any other issues with it.
So just to clarify, the real value in this is that you're increasing your data granularity so that you can tie it to data correlations better then. Is that the primary use of the information?
So part of it is the idea that there's still a lot of research that needs to be done in terms of we don't know the behavior, some of the types of phytoplankton that cause the blooms. And this helps target where areas are of more interest or more concern. But then also this information then can be related back to starting to look into that question of what is driving or what is stopping these blooms. So we know it opens up a lot more questions.
Thank you. Others?
I said two things. First off, this is an FDEP grant, right? This is not part of the Sorrel grant. Just wanted to clarify that. Yeah, this is not, go ahead, Virginia.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so the prior year of work and the analysis that he's presented is funded by an FDEP grant. The weekly reports that you're getting now are Swirl funded because we've run out of the grant money for those. We're beyond the year of weekly reports that the grant funded. We applied for a second year of funding and we haven't heard yet, so we didn't want a hiatus in that reporting. We've scored well in the past. We hope we'll score well this time. So just There's some swirl money going into keeping the weekly reports going.
And that application will be then for continued research as well as the continued reporting. It will cover both.
Right, because he'll have many more scenes that he's able to analyze to try to tease out these patterns in the signature differences.
Okay. And then well, two other things. One thing I notice is, and I read these emails. I'll talk to you offline because I'd love to have, and I know it's brief. I know there's a part there that's like the activity is above and below, but I think there's a way to make it even a little bit easier to read just because I'm not a scientist as much as I'd like to be. But I think that one of the key things that I take away from it is that we do have blooms that happen, but they're not as systemic wide. And I think that was one of the things that you had said, Andrew. Is that correct?
Yeah, and so, well, for instance, when you look at just this little instant, well, for Titusville, where it does go from August to September and then suddenly just dies off, and then you have something up in the Mosquito Lagoon, it's a bit persistent, but then you just also, yeah. Part of the challenge too is that, so you have Dr. Ed Flips of UF who has been sampling the lagoon for 30-some years for phytoplankton, and it's just a challenge of trying to get and find where those 3 or 4 day blooms might be, and then trying to get that sample collected and analyzed. And so we were able to get a couple of those, and are starting to get our results back, where our sample we collected in December was of the Picocyanobacteria. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes from.
Okay.
So just to clarify, based on that statement, so you're using this data and the fact that you're getting it so quickly to then do some of that more targeted to guide those sampling efforts?
Yeah, okay, and so we shared the information with the district, Dr. Flips, and any other researchers who are interested.
I'll just remind you that we also have a $999,000 grant to test an innovative technology to harvest harmful algal blooms from the lagoon, and they're looking at immobilizing in the next month or so. So we're using this data to help direct that equipment where to find a bloom to go harvest. But the ability to differentiate between seagrass versus caulerpa versus sandy bottom versus mucky bottom, every couple days that a satellite flies over, instead of waiting every 2 years for the Water Management District to do their aerial flights, is just a tremendous leap forward in the ability to, yeah.
Other questions? Robert?
How long have you been doing this again?
So this project we started last year. And then my previous master's work was on the 2011 bloom, the one that kind of kicked this whole thing off. So it's been, a number of people have been looking at it over the last decade.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, thank you very much. We will move on to our next presentation, which is aquatic vegetation management. And is it Raleigh?
All right. Logan, can we go to the clam? Has he got the clam, or you have the clam? Can we? There was a edit in the aquatic vegetation. We've got the wrong one loaded, so
Gotcha.
that's what all the flurry's
swap
been.
them
So
up.
we'll reschedule that again, and I apologize.
So it'll be at a different meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the clam one that we'll see here then, I do want to give a shout out to our camera operator, Duncan. We were on a very bumpy boat, and you'll see the footage here looks very smooth. He's hand holding the camera, trying to keep it level. So I was very impressed on how smooth, because I was watching his arm during the thing, and I thought we were just going to have this jerky footage that he wouldn't be able to use, but it turned out pretty well. So we'll roll that beautiful clam footage.
Hello, I'm Raleigh Berry, Senior Environmental Scientist
not
with
that one.
the Brevard County.
We're here in Grant, in the southern part of Brevard County.
Don't see it on the TV.
The Save Our Indian River Lagoon.
There we go.
We're here in Grant, in the southern part of Brevard County. The Save Our Indian River Lagoon program has teamed up with local clam farmers to plant millions of clams out in the lagoon to not only reduce nutrients, but also filter the water and promote an iconic Brevard seafood. The Save Our Lagoon program recognized clams as a great nutrient reduction tool.
So this program is providing $60,000 for clam farmers to plant 5 million clams in the lagoon.
Those 5 million clams can reduce up to 1,000 pounds of nitrogen per year.
So us as farmers, the way the field side of this business works is we take a clam the size of your pinky nail, roughly 4 millimeters, and we plant it either in the bottom or the substrate or in a nursery bag, and then it takes about 12 to 14 months in order to get to market size. Today we're going out to check one of our lease areas out of the many condensed clam areas that we have here in Brevard County. We're going to be checking our crop. We're going to be pulling some clams, as well as checking for grass and fouling organisms and the overall health of the crop.
The culture gear that's used by these farmers, so the nets and the bags they have laid around the bottom, provide protection for tons of fish and invertebrates. Experienced clam farmers in Brevard can reach out to Brevard County Natural Resources to apply for the program. They've got to have an existing lease or apply for one. Once they get a usually 2 to 5 acre lease, we require that they plant a minimum of 500,000 clams, and they're eligible for $6,000 a year to do this. Habitat assessments are done before these leases are designated, so the clams aren't being planted on top of seagrass or disrupting the natural bottom environment.
This grant helps us put about 500,000 clams in the water per farmer, which is a huge help every year to us. It's a big weight off my back, which encourages me to plant more, filter more water, and grow more clams.
These farmers purchase these clam seeds for 1 cent a piece and then can sell them for 10, 20, 30 cents a piece. It's a great return on investment for the farmers and also the lagoon.
While this program focuses on commercial clam farmers, we also have another program that residents can get involved with. Residents who live along the water can visit restoreourshores.org and click on the volunteer tab to find out if their site is suitable for either clam or oyster restoration. Even those who don't live along the shoreline can get involved, as the Restore Our Shores program needs volunteers to help with maintenance and monitoring of some of these residential clam and oyster sites. Restoring filter feeders like this is just one of the many projects we're doing to help save the Indian River Lagoon. We have over 380 different projects that will be removing over 1.3 million pounds of nitrogen pollution every year.
I am born and raised in Indian, Florida. It's everything to me. It's what keeps me farming, is the fact that, you know, as a kid, I loved being in the lagoon. I loved fishing, I loved boating, and so this was a perfect cross for me of being able to work as well as help out our local ecosystem. And every clam counts. You know, every substrate, every bed we put down really helps the lagoon, and it really is. I'm passionate about it, and I love it.
Count your clams.
Count all your clams.
Excellent. Any comments from the committee on the video? Okay.
I'll come. I think it's great. I love it. Good stuff.
So you're going to become a clam farmer?
You have no idea how much I'm thinking about it, Terry. I mean, I was born in Indian Atlantic too, just like that guy. That could be me, man. Do you see this head of hair? See how much hair he had on his head? Man, grow some hair back and some clams, maybe.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me that I think it's important for us to highlight too is that, this is another example of where we've got a lot of integrated benefits. So you got economic benefits, locally sourced food, sustainability. So this is a good example. A lot of times we tend to look at these in a vacuum rather than some of these as more integrated solutions for the entire needs of the community. So I think that's a real piece that we ought to highlight there, and that's the kind of thing that really need to emphasize.
Can I have one more thing too, Todd? Virginia, I loved just video format. I love the way it starts about the clams, and then you go into this is what you can do, and then in the end it's like this is what we are also doing, and then this is what we can do. So it's a combination of kind of like all our work. It's what when we were talking about communication, it's kind of what I had foreseen, like let's just not say what we're doing, let's say what we're doing and how you can do, and combining it all together. And so I did have one comment. I just think in the beginning it'd be nice to have a banner that said for more information, like right off the start, because there are people that are going to see the first 10 seconds of it and not even do the rest. So unfortunately our attention spans are so short that even a little title, you have them there later in the video, but I think something right in the beginning would be great. But I love the way that video is a combination of here's what we're doing and here's what you can do and here's what we've done. It's just a really good combination of all the stuff.
Okay, thank you. So sorry, go ahead, Stephanie.
I just want to give a little plug because Nick Saloop was a graduate of Holy Trinity Episcopal Academy.
Okay, thank you.
It was a really great video. I was kind of hoping there might be a little dig or something about Sebastian and their 6 old grouches with it, but it's all right. And I'll just say, quick comment is, growing up down where I did, we were in the Spoil Islands, like most of my weekends. That's, if we didn't do something else. Easter, that was an island weekend. And I did hear from the old timers down in Grant that used to do all the clamming and stuff back in the day. That's what they were saying they think killed most of the seagrass, or was the big, because they just raked it out instead of picking them by hand like they used to. So.
Or by foot. We used
Yeah,
to do it by foot.
Okay, any others?
I've heard some stigmas about seafood coming out of the lagoon in the past. Should we count this as an indication that those are unfounded, or that they're improving, or that sort of thing, that they're being available commercially?
There's a state agency, FDACS, that's in charge of making sure the seafood is safe. The aquaculture coming out of the lagoon is safe, and they test a random sampling of it and the water every so often. Yeah.
Okay, any others? Okay, thank you.
Question.
Who is that? Oh, Laura Lee.
Yeah, how did the clams do after we had in East? I know it wasn't as south, but we had 17 fish up here in the north part of the lagoon. What was the survivability?
After the hurricane, or?
Laura Lee, could you repeat that question? You were breaking up a little bit. I just want to make sure we've got your full question.
Okay, I'll take it off the speakerphone. Is this better?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So we had a lot of rainfall with Hurricane Ian. It wasn't nearly as bad in the south end of the county as it was up here on the north end. We had 17 inches of rain up here. What was the survivability of the clams in the project after all of that rainfall?
So this is anecdotally, just from talking to the farmers, but they didn't experience any kind of big mortality due to salinity or the winds, pushing around the nets, uncovering the clams and then increasing predation. They really didn't see any. I guess they were pretty lucky, but it could have been worse, I'm sure.
Sorry, Jenny, do you know anything about, so the zoo also placed about 100 different small clam beds throughout the lagoon using the super clams. And so if you want a better response to, regional differences that perhaps varied with rainfall conditions, that would probably be a better data set to look at than these 3 sites that were all at the south end of the county.
Yeah, their super clam connected restoration project covered more area of the county. And they have worked up their results from that. I think they did see an importance of salinity in their survival numbers. It was presented at the IRL symposium, which I believe is available online to watch. So that'd be another great place to dig in to that information. I'm sorry, I don't have it off the top of my head, but I do know salinity was a factor.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, we have no old business or new business items, so we'll move on to general public comments, and I have 2 cards. We'll start off with Craig Wallace. And just as a reminder, for public comment, we will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. Craig Wallace with the Brevard Indian River Lagoon Coalition. Great presentations today. The most impressive thing I see here is the progress we're making over time here. And I think Vinny pointed it out that, we're really starting to see that thermometer. You can actually see something on the thermometer. I think this is critical as we look forward, because what we're looking at is, where do we go from here? This program goes through 2026. And we've got to think about what happens after that. So it's really important that people start to see, visually see in the water and in charts and in everything we do, what the progress we're making. So we're going to, working with Virginia, we're going to work with the staff to try to make that information as broadly publicized as possible. But we're also looking for ideas on how to make that, examples of what people have seen out there in the lagoon that are significant changes in what's happened over, since 2016. So all these things we'll put together and then try to reiterate that out to the community over the next couple of years to try to boost everybody's confidence that there's actually something good going on here. The other thing I just wanted to mention is we did do, in preparation for looking at the next couple of years, we've done some consumer research that we will be turning over information from that to the staff to try to look at how we can look at our educational programs going forward. We'll, like I say, and there will also be there's a messaging program that we're putting together, and it's going to be really the 5-county area, not just in Brevard County, but obviously Brevard County is 70% of the lagoon, so there'll be a lot of focus here. So anyway, I just want to let you know that, and we're pulling for you, doing a great job. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And Lou Kontnick.
Great, thanks an awful lot. And following up on what Craig had said, for those of you who may not have been involved early, the Brevard Indian River Lagoon Coalition formed the Political Action Committee that helped underwrite the work for the vote in 2016. Since then, we've been doing an awful lot of work, primarily in trying to share with the community just the insights, both with Sorrel, because that's the big one here, but also St. John's and NEP and so on and so forth. Over the last year, we've begun to try to build a meaningful advocacy tool and process, what we call the Lagoon Voices. The lagoon doesn't have a voice. It can speak, and it did speak in 2016. It spoke with death. But there is legislation that can be beneficial or detrimental to our progress here. And so, hoping that the camera is available, we have right now our recommendations with respect to 7 legislative initiatives in the legislature right now. There are 4 that we are endorsing and encouraging people to go ahead and write, call, and tell their legislatures, yes, we think that's good. And there are 3 that we're encouraging people to do exactly the opposite and say, no, this is not good. So let me just review those real quickly. We have SB 1632 and HB 1379, which would reduce septic systems. There's SB 172 and HB 177 that would protect swimmers from fouled water. There's SB 880 and HB 1405 that would restrict biosolids, and SB 1686 and HB 1489 to protect the barrier islands. So we're promoting those. We're opposing SB 1240 and HB 1197 that would preempt local control of land and water controls. SB 540 and HB 359 that would essentially risk objections to comprehensive plans. I'll pass this document around if I can, so that you can go ahead and just click and come to our site. You'll see what we're doing both currently in legislative and more generally in advocacy. You're doing a great job. We love it.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have 2 more cards. Nicole Coons.
I come from North Dakota. You think I need a sweater down here? Air conditioner.
So, hi everyone. I am Nicole Coons. I own a company called Priority One, and I work in a lot of different industries. And it's always difficult to introduce myself because I don't like to really talk about myself. Some of the things that I have done, I'm sort of an environmental specialist with water emissions, those types of things. Some of the, I'm working with ConocoPhillips on a worldwide project to manage and decrease like their gas stream emissions by 50%. And their vent gas by 100%. I also have worked with the oil and gas industry in getting them to use production water for fracking and things like that rather than their freshwater supplies. I'm also a biologist, and I'm also a 7th through 12th grade teacher. So I'm kind of all over the place. But my mission is sort of to whatever I can partner with God to do to make this environment and protect our earth and our people and our animals is what I seem to be interested in. So I've kind of, and I get up and speak all the time. For some reason, I'm nervous right now. So, but anyway, so I wrote down a couple notes because I know that I just have a few minutes here. But what we would like to do is we'd like to participate in helping make a difference in the Indian River Lagoon project. And so I have teams of people, of course, that work inside all the different industries. So we have many arms. Of course, I'm only one person, so I have to have a team. And so basically what we're looking at with this Indian River Lagoon, and I just heard a gentleman say, you know, it's sort of the muck of death. So what we would like to do is help take this muck of death and turn it into a dirt that grows the necessary food so we can have happy, healthy animals that live in this lagoon and restore it. So what we have proven to do all over, really, we've been all over the world with our technology and the different things that we use, but there are three things that we look at in a biosource and what they need. Oxygen, a food source, and nutrients. Those are the 3 things that we look at. And in studying, you know, if we're incorrect about this, please let me know, but in the Indian River Lagoon, what we see is we have a lack of oxygen, because, you know, we have nitrogen and phosphorus that are too high. And so we have an oversupply of the food source, and we have an oversupply of the nutrients. So what would our approach be in helping bring this back into balance is we have patented technology to go in and actually inject oxygen into the actual muck. We have seen many feet be taken care of in just a few weeks. And by doing that, because there are living microorganisms in that muck, and if we give them the oxygen that they need to survive, to change them from an anaerobic to an aerobic species, they will take care of this all on their own. So we would create just basically a barge powered by solar system that would go out, inject the oxygen, which of course we have a lot of different measurements that we have to do in order to know how much. But those are the things that we specialize in.
Okay, if you could bring your comments to a close, please.
Yep. Yes. You know, and I guess, you know, one of the most important things that we have learned over the years is that if we just work with Mother Nature, you know, we'll just help her along. If we work against Mother Nature, we're going to lose every time. So we just encourage whatever's there. We just work with Mother Nature. So anyway, thank you guys.
And we have your contact information. We'll pass that on to staff, and I think they're always open for good ideas. So the last card I have is for, I believe it's Paul Cray.
My name is Paul Cray. I'm a resident over on Merritt Island. I saw the notification about the sewage lift station. I'd like to get some more information about that. I know that the residents that live in that specific area that it's being discussed about are concerned, as you know, you would be if it was going to be located in your backyard. So, you know, people are concerned about it. You know, do we have multiple locations? Is that the only location? You know, those are questions that are being asked to me, since I said I was going to be coming to this meeting to listen to the information, the options, and what's being planned. And then second, it would also be very beneficial if this committee or notifications could go out to the community in regards to the sewer projects, where it is, what's coming up, so people have an understanding and are prepared for financial planning that they have to do if it's going to cost them some money to put the laterals in from that standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I'll just comment if you, I don't know this specific project. I think if you could get with staff and share your concerns on the specific project, they can connect you with the partner that would be leading the project. One comment I would have on this is that as our committee, we're primarily focused on the funding side of things, and really all of these projects are generally executed through another government partner. In some instances, it is Brevard County, but it's typically outside of this specific committee. And so there's definitely information available on the projects we're funding, but the vast majority of the communications and the specific contributions are going to be outside the purview of this committee because they are implemented by those government partners directly. So
Anything would be beneficial.
okay, thank you. Okay, any further public comment? Hearing none, I'll move on to final comments from the committee. Open it up for anyone that has anything.
I just have one. I was, in case that no one knows, there's a, 5,000-mile wide seaweed floating towards, sargassum that's attacking the state of Florida. But anyways, when I saw the news piece this weekend, I was like, oh my gosh, I understand everything they're talking about. You know, they were like nitrogen and phosphorus, and I was watching with somebody, and they're like, what are they talking about? And I was like, you should come to our meetings. You'd know what they're talking about. So, I'm very thankful for the knowledge I've gained from this, and I thought that was funny this weekend. Just wanted to share it.
Okay, any others? Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for attending, and we are adjourned.
The opinions expressed by any member of the public during any period of public comment do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, or the program sponsor, and are solely those of the presenter. The Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, Space Coast Government Television, and the program sponsor hereby expressly disclaim any and all responsibility or liability for any defamatory or slanderous statements expressed by any member of the public during any such period.